Whether on a particular movie I decide to do captions or voiceover, which is what you're listening to now, usually depends on how lazy I feel. Captions take a lot of time, and for me at least, it's always easier to shoot my mouth off. So this is going to be a voiceover. Some things I need to explain. While in the background you can see the route we're taking being followed in detail. There's one small item, the quality of the pictures that you're going to see. I had planned, and in fact I took about 300 digital images, and this was going to be absolutely a great documentary, but due to a finger problem and the fact that I decided to use the Windows upload rather than the Canon upload, I lost everything. So what you're going to see in pictures are some very nice ones that Margaret took, a few that I took on my iPad rather than my digital camera, and the remainder, to try to show you where we've been, are from Google Street View and Google Earth. So, and you're still going to see some nice scenery, and most of the places we went to, there were some that were not on Google Street View yet, especially in the Gas Bay. But you will see most places. What is missing, and what I really hoped to show, were the nice people that we met, the charming waitresses, the nice young ladies at the Lunenburg Railway Museum, and other museums. People, because I like to take people, and I took a lot of pictures of people, and I'm sorry, but that's missing. So here goes anyway. Enjoy. Here's Margaret with our beautiful Subaru Impreza 2003 model. We've only taken it on 2 extended drives. The first one in the fall of 2002 when we bought her, and this one. Chrysler's Farm was the site of a battle in 1813 between a vastly superior American invading force and a team of Canadian pioneers and British regulars who whopped the Americans and sent them flying back across the river where they belonged.
We fired our guns and the rebels kept a-coming. There wasn't as many as there was a while ago. We fired once more and they began to run.
Across the old St. Lawrence all the way to Buffalo. I couldn't get Johnny Horton. Chrysler's Farm itself is about 7 miles east of Morrisburg, and it's got a nice little museum and a monument. What else? We lunched in style at the Mallorytown Tim Hortons and discovered that the Mallorytown en route is the first one on the 401 as you travel west from the Quebec border. I did take a picture, which I've lost, of a little plaque that's there to celebrate this amazing milestone in Canadian history. And the end of day 1 found us at the First Canada Inn in beautiful downtown Cornwall, and that evening we dined at an amazingly good Italian restaurant, the Casa Paolo, just down the street. Day 2 found us on our way from Cornwall to Eley, which is on the south shore of the St. Lawrence at Quebec City. We stopped for lunch at Saint Cyril de Wendover. Lord knows where we got that name from. Very English. Where we discovered that a bistro only serves liquor, no food. And the church is enormous. And we found lunch at Les Trois Étoiles, another gorgeous stop. The Hotel Kennedy in Lviv was the only conventional, boring type hotel motel we stayed at. Did have a very nice breakfast. And in the evening we found this really nice restaurant, Cosmos. I wish I had some of the photos I took of the inside of it. It was really great. Our third night's rest was in Rimouski. We stopped for lunch at Trois Pistoles, but since that town doesn't have a Google Street View, this is all we can show you of. We stayed that night in Rimouski at the L'Auberge de Leader, which I think means duck. And I went for a blustery bike ride. And that evening, we had a really nice dinner. All the food in Quebec was beautiful at the Bistro Nipigon. And day 4 found us in the beautiful village of Sainte Anne de Mons, further east into the Gaspé, still clinging to the St. Lawrence. Here we stayed at the beautiful and incredibly posh Auberge la Seigneurie des Monts, the harbour. And a sign of things to come, wind fans at Cap Chat. Continuing on round the Gaspé Peninsula on our way to Percé, we passed interesting scenery, a lot of fascinating lighthouses, and then the highlight really of the scenery, the magnificent Gros Morne. Here it is as we approach it and close up. Further round the corner, the scenery continues as we go past the Gros Morne and on into the town of Gaspé itself. Here we shop-gazed and lunched at the Café des Artistes. In Percé, we stayed at the Auberge Les Trois Sœurs. I didn't see the sisters, but I guess they were away for the weekend. And we actually did have a view from the motel. Our first view of the Rock. No, we didn't hire a chopper. This is just to give you a really good view of it. We dined that evening at the 4.5 star at least Maison de Pâté, Le Récif. Récif seems to mean reef, but I have no idea where they got the name from. Time for another picture of a French-Canadian church. This one's at Bonaventure. At Port Daniel we passed yet another sign of the times, a closed railroad station. The line is still open, but the Vere trains just go all the way through to Halifax. This station stopped closed, I think, only a few years before. So why did we stop at the Campbellton Walmart? Well, I tore a hole in my shorts, so it was a case of
Bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your stress.
We found John's Motel in Beresford, which is a suburb of Bathurst, New Brunswick. And it was the ideal motel, $72, and it even had a beautiful swimming pool. So while Margaret splashed in the water, I did a 20-mile bike ride out of town and back. We dined at Danny's Inn and Conference Center, just a few hundred yards up. We crossed the Miramichi River by the Centennial Bridge, which took us amazingly to downtown Miramichi. Well, not quite, but we made a detour anyway. While stationed at RCAF Chatham, just up the road, one evening 4 of us, having imbibed well and not too wisely, decided to pay a visit to the local church, to ring the bells and play the organ. We succeeded, and then beat a hasty retreat. Our next stop was going to be Shediac, and we stopped for lunch at St. Louis to dine in the finest elegance New Brunswick could provide. I threw this shot in just so you could see how great the bike lanes are in most New Brunswick towns. The Auberge Gabriel in Shediac. Our room is the little loft you can see right at the back. It was hot that day, I mean really hot. So we stopped for ice cream. And then in the evening, an elegant dinner in the Auberge Gabriel, where we were entertained by a local folk singer. There he is, way off in the background. Day 8. Have you been keeping count? And it's over the Confederation Bridge. And we stayed at the Banbridge Inn in uptown Charlottetown. And we found a nearby Boston Pizza for dinner. Yummy. Day 9, a full day on P.E.I. and a gloriously hot one. I got up early, cycled 40 miles up to Brackley Point National Park, while Margaret walked all the way to downtown Charlottetown and explored the harbour, and I think there was some sort of running event on. Went to a commemorative park and looked at the plaque, naturally, and then walked back to meet me. Together we lunched at St. James Gate, and we liked it so much that we went back for dinner, this time inside. Day 10 and a Sunday morning drive through the P.E.I. countryside. Notice lots of potato fields. We took the Wood Island ferry across to Caribou, Nova Scotia. Water was calm. There's Margaret on the top deck, enjoying the sun. We lunched at the Dine and Dash Diner in Trenton. And this was not just another diner, it really was great. It was almost, dare we say it, American. Trenton's known as Steel Town because in 1870 Canada's first steel mill was opened here. It's undergone many changes, but in the park there are monuments to its history. The one is fairly obvious. This one is a replica of an axle hammer, whatever that is. Later in the day we crossed the Canso Causeway into Port Hawkesbury for our night stay at the Gagnon House. Margaret took this shot of the interesting bedroom. I think she has a thing for bedrooms. Have to have one picture of the beauty of Cape Breton Island, stolen from Google Earth. Also one of a road sign, because a lot of them are in Gaelic and English. Another disappearing railroad. This time it's the Sydney to Louisburg Railroad, which vanished in 1968. But it's remembered in song.
Station master looked all around, along the track, both up and down. But the train could not be found, for there was neither sight nor sound. There was neither sight nor sound. Walked on slowly to the station door, like so many times before. Looked outside into a sunshine beam, closed his eyes and dreamed a dream, drifted off into a dream. The winds of change forever go, some things stay and some things go. The falling rain must melt the snow before its still whistle will always blow.
After a day in historic Louisburg, we drove to Sydney and stayed at the very luxurious Colby House. Day 12, and we drove south across the swing bridge at St. Peter's and down into Truro, where we stayed at another very, very spiffy place, and this one was called the Belgravia. We got there early, so Margaret wandered around the neighborhood while I went out for a nice country bike ride. In the evening, the nook and cranny on Prince Street was a lot more lively, and this is where I found the greatest beer I have ever tasted. Hell Bay English Ale, brewed in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. Next morning we looked around downtown Truro. This is English Place. Then set off to our next destination, the Maritime Air Museum in Greenwood, Nova Scotia, to take a nostalgic look at Bob's old squadron commander, Rum West.
And didn't we hate to say goodbye? But we'll remember, yes, we'll remember those days he led the Lynx in the sky.
And then an evening with another old squadron member, Lloyd Graham and Mary Lou. Oh, well, there's a story behind the mug. We don't know where Punchbowl 8.5 is, but maybe one day we'll find him and we can return the mug. It rained that night and into day 14 as we drove towards Lunenburg to stop at the Maplebird Inn, built in 1826, a beautiful old place, and then set off to explore the town. No prizes for guessing what this is, of course. It's the Blue Nose 2. Doesn't look as good without the sails, does it? Yeah, we had lunch and dinner, because it was so nice, at the Grand Banker Seafood Restaurant. We spent the whole day in Lunenburg, and next morning, while I went on a really nice 30-mile ride around the peninsula, Margaret did a walking tour of all the grand houses in town.
The stately homes of England, how beautiful they stand, to prove the upper classes have still the upper hand, though the fact that they have to be rebuilt and frequently mortgaged to the hilt is inclined to take the guilt off the gingerbread and certainly damps the fun of the eldest son. But still we won't be beaten, we'll scrimp and screw and save. The playing fields of Eton have made us frightfully brave. And though if the Van Dykes have to go and we pawn the Bechstein brand, we'll stand by the stately homes of England.
Sad testament to Lunenburg's years as a fishing port, the memorial to those lost at sea. Lunenburg has a magnificent railway museum dedicated to the Halifax and Southwestern. The price of admission gets you a ticket stamped with one of the stations, and I chose Shubenacadie, Shuby. And next day on our drive out, we visited Shuby. This is where the station used to be, and a quick jaunt down the road took us to Shuby's Tin Museum. Amazing the things you find in these little places. It was day 16 and we were doing the long drive from Lunenburg up to Moncton, New Brunswick. Lots of highway, lots of trees, just a long way. Willie Nelson would have enjoyed it. We overnighted at the Magnetic Hill Bed and Breakfast. What an original name. And then went to see The Hill. This is looking from the bottom, so it kind of looks down anyway. And then we ate at the Wharf Village, which is a theme park built next door to the Magnetic Hill. Day 17 was the longest day's drive, actually. 230 miles from Moncton to Grand Fall. But the monotony was broken by a stop-off at the King's Landing Historic Settlement. It dates from 1783, but it had to be relocated and rebuilt in the 60s when a hydro development raised the St. Johns River. In Grand Falls, we stayed at the Maple Tourist Home Bed and Breakfast, and while I took a bike ride up the St. John River, Margaret took a stroll up Broadway, a rather grandly named main drag. Next morning, we took a look at the very aptly named Grand Falls, the grand they really are, and then hit the road to our next destination, back in La Belle Provence at Montmagny. We stopped for lunch in Saint Pascal at the Motel de la Montagne. Montmagny is a beautiful little town, almost like a village, and the Auberge Chez Octave, which was built in 1847, was an absolute dream stop. Very French. The young lady that checked us in didn't speak a word of English, but we made out okay. And if you're wondering where the English phone box came from, not a clue. These are our host and hostess, and this is our bedroom. Dinner was a dream, and breakfast was pretty good too. On day 19, on our way to Joliet, our GPS decided to take us on an interesting tour through Old Lévis, down to the ferry across to Quebec City, through part of the old town, and then eventually onto the Boulevard Henri Bourassa and the autoroute. We stopped for lunch at the delightful Boulangerie Quay in the town of Pointe du Lac before pressing on to our night's stop, the Hotel Chateau Joliet in, guess where? Joliet. Looks very grand, but it was the only place I could find. Day 20 was a short ride to Ottawa, the home of yuck politicians, and a charming little bed and breakfast, the Auberge McGee's Inn, which was in walking distance of Bywards Market. We both lunched and dinnered at the Old Dubliner in the market. Creatures of habit, I guess we are, where I found another great beer, a Lug Tread Lagered Ale. Day 20, our last, and we drove home along picturesque Highway 7 through bustling downtown Marmora and eventually arrived home. A total of 3,260 miles and a very enjoyable vacation.